How are you doing? This is Martin from Gardens for Life. We got to show you our garden in mid-September. This is the end of the summer here in Ireland. So this is the new garden we set up primarily to grow some vegetables for our family and friends and neighbours, and also some of the ancient tubers such as oca, yacon and mashua, and Jerusalem artichokes of course. And we also like to use this space to grow some new plants and attract a lot of beneficial insects into the new garden by planting little flower islands or wildflower islands, basically perennial plants that are beneficial to the insects. First, we're going to show you maybe just a few seconds on how it was made, how this garden was set up in only 2 weeks. So we were basically planting up this garden about 3 to 4 months ago. So a lot of the things you see here in the garden, including the vegetables and the perennial and woody species of plants as well, haven't actually been here. It was basically just a meadow. I'll show you here, just like that over there. And this space here has become highly productive, and we'll show you around in a minute. Since we started the tour the last time from this angle, we might as well start in this corner here. We have a water tank. It's a IBC tank on the right hand side there, and that was basically just as a precaution in case we have another long drought in the summer here in Ireland. It did help just to keep watering the plants that were still left in pots, but other than that we didn't need it. So there was no irrigation required whatsoever once you have the wood chips down. So in this corner here is a mixed corner, a little bit of an insect island again. We have planted some feverfew. All of these, you can see there's a lot of insects hovering around them. And we also have some kohlrabi. As you see here, there's a purple, and there's also a green or white variety. We have some oca, these are the oca plants. You'll see plenty of them around our gardens. And there's a perennial kale, Portuguese kale, or walking stick kale it's also known as. This is pineapple mint, very decorative plant with its serrated leaves. So we have a few different patches of oca here, and here's some Jerusalem artichokes like these here. So we'll walk over to here, and you'll find a lot of different things around, like berry bushes. So this is aronia berry. It's also known as choke cherry, I believe. Fruits are quite astringent, but they make for a really good ingredient for the likes of jellies and wines as well. And here we have a strawberry plant that was only in a 2-litre pot, and it's doing really well now. It was suffering, basically left in the pot for about a year, and as you can see here, it's doing really well now. It's lush and it's making babies. It's actually the shoots coming off it are growing, or the suckers as they're known as, are growing new plants. Just going to pull one up gently. With the wood chips you're able to do that. See that? The new plants are rooting into the ground here. Straight into the wood chips, no problem at all. Whether you have compost underneath or not, strawberries will do fine. And definitely one of our favourite things to do. Same as James from the Garden channel with his food forest. He's based in New Jersey. He prefers to have these actually under fruit trees, and they have a fairly similar climate to us here. Here's a weed, actually silverweed, growing through. I just wanted to keep a few of the little weeds here just to demonstrate how easy it is to actually pull these up. And as you see here, look, there's a whole string of them. So we can just, I never actually throw dead plant matter in the garden. I just throw it out into the field just to not encourage the slugs, as they can smell dead plant matter. Here's a Moroccan mint plant. There's a blackcurrant plant. And here's one of our insect islands, as we call them, or insectary islands we should call them. This is basically just a little bit of a guild of flowers, beneficial to the insects, basically providing them with food for long periods of time. We always add in our perennial flowering bushes, such as the, of course, the marshmallow, which many of you know about now. Look how many flowers there's on it, just a mass of flowers, and the stem has become quite thick as well. That's only been in the ground since just 3 months ago, and it was a small little plant in a 2-litre pot. Here we have some great mullein, also known as cowboy's toilet paper, because the leaves are really soft. They have lots of hairs on them, just to stop the leaves from drying out in the arid desert climate where it comes from originally. And these flowering stalks from the great mullein actually flower bit by bit over a long period of time. So you get a lot of food for the insects. And these are chive plants. They also flower, and of course we can always take a few chives if we like. And we have nasturtiums, which are always good for the bees, and you can eat them too. They have a very peppery flavour. You can also eat the leaves of the nasturtium, very same way as the mashua. These are the oca plants that we had a separate video about. If you look up on our YouTube channel, there's a video of this particular patch of oca plants, where we planted them into pots in the greenhouse, and we planted them out in the video, and we had you guess how many kilos of ocas are going to come out of this 1 little square meter patch of plants. Basically, the person with the closest guess as to how many kilos of harvest are going to come out of this patch of oca are going to get a sample sent to them in the post. So please go to YouTube and go to our oca planting video, and comment below as a guess. Just make your guess. People have already made a few suggestions. You can see here there is a lot of corn plants that we planted. We actually ended up with too many corn plants. You'll see here there's a few batches of corn plants planted actually. These ones spent more time in the greenhouse in larger pots. We transplanted them later, kept them in the greenhouse a little bit longer for 2 weeks extra. It wasn't really beneficial, but it was an experiment. This patch of corn plants actually was planted directly in the ground, and it has done much better as a result. So the other corn plants that I showed you a second ago didn't benefit from being planted later and kept in the greenhouse for an extra 2 weeks. They have quite substantial cobs on them. This is a variety called Northern Extra Sweet, and it's from northern Scotland, and we're hoping they'll do quite well. We've just selected this variety for one simple reason, because we were just running behind with planting them and getting them started in the greenhouse this year. Hopefully we'll end up with lots of ripe corn. Even though it is mid-September, I think this corn is now about 2.5 months old, and I think it's 80 to 90 days that it takes to ripen from seed, and we should be okay. Sure, it's looking promising anyway. Here is a big patch of yacon plants. For those of you who are not familiar with it or haven't heard of it, it's actually a tuber that has a very sweet flavour. In the winter time you can harvest it. It's like an apple, but very crisp and very watery, but also very sweet, and there's no sugar in it. Yacon is actually a plant that's in a lot of the diabetic foods. I like to just kind of dig it up in the winter time and use it as we need it, and you can actually make a syrup from it if you wanted to as well, which is a pretty good product. Well, you can just eat the tubers as they are. So we have these are 2 rows of mashua plants, one here and one here. Of course, they have taken over this patch of ground now, but that's fine. It's just right in the middle here. We also have 20 of the zebra mallows planted right in the middle, just as plants, and we're going to take them out in the winter and we're going to plant them in other places. We're going to distribute them around the place. So it's more of a holding space in between actual productive growing space as well. So we do like to plant things underneath a trellis, as I'll show you in a minute, especially with the runner beans and peas. We plant kale underneath them. Here is another mint plant over here, and here's a couple of rows of beetroot and carrots. We just mix them up, and here's another row. So we'll see how those go. They should actually keep growing for another couple of months, and hopefully there'll be something worth harvesting in it. But we had too many plants and we just decided to plant them out anyway, even though they were maybe a month late or so. We have another row of oca here. That's the New Zealand red, which is actually the most popular variety, even though I have a feeling that this year the other variety called strawberries and cream, it's a purple oca, I think that will do better this year. So we're back over to the corner here now. Here we have one of our 2 square meters of potatoes. We wanted to plant these up as an experiment, and we're going to do a separate video on them as we harvest them. And you'll see that we spent almost no time at all planting these, and we planted them very densely because we just had very little space available for potatoes this year. We had other things to plant, but we're going to put up a separate video, and we're going to do basically a planting and a harvest video all in one. Actually, here's some seeds. For those of you who didn't know, potatoes actually grow seeds. These are just like, they look like tomatoes, just green, and you could plant those as well. People just don't do it. They just take up the tubers, which aka the potatoes themselves, and plant them next year. But I think we might as well just plant some of these seeds, potato seeds as well, just as an experiment. Has anyone here done it? Please let us know in the comments. We'd appreciate it. I wonder if it would be successful. I understand that the potatoes wouldn't be true to type, the variety, but we don't mind that anyway. Here is a patch of kohlrabi, quite a few tubers in it. That's what the tuber looks like. It's above ground. It's a bit like a beetroot, or kind of like it looks like a beetroot, but it's more like kind of like a turnip. You can just cut it into chips and fry it, and then throw a bit of hot water in it and put a lid on the pan, and then steam them for about 5 minutes. Lovely vegetable. Kohlrabi is the name. Definitely worth trying. It takes very little effort to plant. It took about 10 minutes to plant all of these, and there must be about 200 of them in it. We've already been harvesting from this patch here. Here is our little experiment. If you have seen any of our other videos earlier this year, you'll see we planted a row of blackberry plants. This is a thornless blackberry variety. Actually 2 different varieties. 20 plants along the edge of the garden here, and some pumpkin plants as well, and we had them trellis onto the path at the edge of the garden here. This is like basically a 3-foot patch, or sorry, a 3-foot path, about a meter wide, and we just had them basically take over the space. As you can see here, we've already been basically tip layering these plants. Any of these shoots that come off the blackberry, you just basically scar them. You can scratch them, or even remove some of the leaves will do, and then you simply get rid of that, and you simply dig a little bit of a trench for them, covered with a bit of wood chip, and then put a rock on top. and that'll hold it down, and it's going to root. And then after about maybe a month or two, probably about 6 weeks, you can cut off the shoot from the mother plant, and you can take that up as a separate plant already rooted. So that's one way of tip layering, but we'll have a lot more on propagation coming up soon enough now. You can see here is one of the red curry pumpkins. It's quite a substantial size of a red curry. Normally they don't grow that big. They're normally a 2-portion pumpkin, but you can see here it's a good sized pumpkin for a soup for about 2 to 3 people. And the reason why we like the red curry squash so much is because it has a nutty flavour. It's very rich in the fibre. It's fibrous as well, but also it grows lots of little pumpkins on one vine on each of the plants. So, and here's some Portuguese kale. That's the walking stick variety again, perennial. It grows for years. We don't know exactly how old they get, but we do know that we have some that are 3 years old now, and others have said they go to at least 5 years old. Lovely variety of kale, very good flavour, and very tender leaves as well. Fantastic vegetable, and you can harvest it all winter long. As you can see here, the catter people have been at it. You know, we don't mind actually sacrificing a little bit of our kale just to help out the butterfly population. So they do need to eat too. Here is some red Russian kale. It's also a very good variety of kale. It's very cold hardy. It can actually, the seeds can germinate all the way down to 12 degrees Celsius. So you can start it very early in the year, and it actually grows all the way down to 4 degrees Celsius as far as I remember. So which means that it's going to keep growing for a large part of the winter, and it's very hardy as well. So we keep it over the winter. We eat some of it, but we keep the plants in the ground, and they actually grow flowers in the springtime, in the very early spring, and we have the whole garden full of lovely yellow flowers, and the insects are all in our garden basically, and that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to attract all of the beneficial insects and feed them, and also we end up with a lot of kale seeds basically. So we planted this row of red Russian kale underneath of our pea trellis. These are forage peas, which are actually a bit more wild, but very hardy variety of peas. And as you can see here, this is just a trellis made of hazelwood and just bound together with some string at the top. And that's all there's to it. It has survived all of the storms from the last 4 or 5 months anyway. And even underneath where there was just shade, the kale has thrived, and it's now going to pick up after the peas are gone. It's still going to get more sunlight again until the depths of winter. This will be the second patch of potatoes. Normally we only harvest them as we need them throughout the winter, all the way to the second week of March we've done in the last few years. Even though you'd think that they'll go rotten in the ground and they'll freeze and thaw and just go mushy. Not under the wood chips. Under the wood chips, these potatoes are actually stored perfectly. And of course you'd want to take them before the end of March, because the soil life wakes up at that point in April, and things are going to get eaten. But for the most part, we do not rotate our potatoes. We don't plant them in different places every year. We just always keep planting them in the same place. Paul Gauci has been doing that for the last 15 years or so, and he has had great success with wood chips. One thing Paul Gauci does really well is he takes all the smallest potatoes for himself to eat and always puts the biggest potato off each plant back in the ground. And that way every year you get bigger potatoes. So put the big ones back in the ground and don't eat them. Eat the smaller ones. That way you get the genetics. The very same way as any of the tubers, or even fruit, if you are growing fruit from seed, which is normally not done because you use cuttings. But here is a little bit of a holding area we just set up there because we had to pot up a lot of our cuttings that we did. Actually, look at these plants here. The first 2 rows here are the red currant plants that have been grown from cuttings. That's from one of our other videos, how to get free plants from softwood cuttings. That's the name of the video if you're interested. And basically it's very easy to grow, to end up with that many plants after a few months only. This is just 1 tray worth of cuttings from a few red currant plants. Check out the video if you'd like to know how to grow free plants. And if you have questions about that, let us know. Here's some courgette plants. These have finished producing now. There's still a few small courgettes growing on them, but they definitely got stunted by the early 2-week cold period at the start of August. First 2 weeks of August were quite cold, unusually cold even. Then it picked up again though, so things are growing again. Well, as you know, all of the mallows always, or the marrows, sorry, they are very prone to cold damage or frost damage. They just don't, well, we didn't have a frost, but they don't do well unless it's very warm. Well, all of the summer squashes are Mediterranean as far as I know, and of course the winter squashes being the pumpkins, all of the leaves are going to die from these pumpkin plants basically during the first frost, which is normally, it could happen anytime in Ireland. It could be the 1st of October or it could be somewhere around that date. Here's a different pumpkin. Let me know if you know what type of pumpkin that is. I just don't know. It's certainly not a red curry squash, because it's green and it's a different shape, but I'd love to know. We did plant a few varieties that we just got seeds from friends, and so here you can see a lot of these pumpkin plants have taken over the path, which we don't really use it that much anyway, and we can still get around. As Michael Pilarski will say, I didn't really need the path that much, I needed to squash more. So you can see here there is a lot of pumpkins underneath here. Check it out. And they're still going to be producing for quite some time yet. This is only mid-September, and pumpkins usually are harvested in Ireland anyway, end of October, Halloween time as it happens. These have done very, very well. Here's a very big marshmallow plant. Look at all the flowers. I mean, the insects are basically just hovering all over it, all around it, and landing on it. It's like a meeting ground for the insects in the middle of basically a field full of grass like that. There was very little here for them before, other than a couple of wildflowers, a little bit of clover, and that's about it. But now these little wildflower islands have become the insect hubs of our garden, and hopefully we can encourage the insects to stay by planting more and more food for them and giving them a habitat, especially using the wood chips. That works very well. This is our runner bean trellis, also made with hazelwood sticks, as you can see here. All just done with string on the top and hazelwood sticks stuck in the ground about a foot deep, and it has been super productive. We planted perennial kale, again the Portuguese variety, on one side underneath, which is really grown up very tall and beyond the beans even, but the beans are still producing. And here you can see some of them have grown a bit too big, which we're going to keep some of them on in order to get seeds for next year. So you can see here there's a lot of red Russian kale here too, and we're going to be harvesting that throughout the winter, I'd say, and maybe leave some of it behind. Of course, we're not going to harvest all of it, so that we get all of the benefits of the flowers in the spring. They will flower and go to seed. Here you can see what it looks like under the trellis. This is one of the bits of wood from the trellis, and this is the kale stems that are grown right down into the wood chips here. They've been planted. There's a video on that one too. How do we plant the beans and the peas around our trellis. It only took 20 minutes to plant this patch of runner beans, and it has been mega productive. We've had probably about 15 kilos of runner beans, and there's still more, and it's still producing too. And you can see here, these may be very large, and you might think they're a bit too big to harvest, and they might be very stringy and tough. They're not. These plants have grown so quickly. Paul Gauci says, if a plant is healthy and it grows quickly, it always is tender. And now, of course, with the beans, you can't just try them raw, but with any of the other food here, like, you could just eat the stem of it, and it's very tender. Even the kale. When Paul Gauci gives a tour of his garden, he always tells people, pick a leaf of that and eat it, and just start with the tough part, the part that's normally tough, like such as this red Russian kale. You'd start with the stem, and it's very tender and sweet and very juicy, and it's just a matter of having the right soil conditions. I mean, the wood chips help with that, of course. They help balance everything, especially the soil life. Here is an ocean of oca. It's about 10 square meters worth of oca, and it's not very many plants though. There's only, watch this now, there's actually, here there's one row, and there's one more row here, and at the end there's a row of strawberries and cream. And these are actually a Polish variety called Pavlov, if I'm not mistaken. And there's a few other ones that I got from my friend in Belgium. I'll put his website into the description below. He has a website, and he grows rare vegetables and ancient vegetables, and he's very good at it. He has a lot of experience, and he's breeding oca as well. He has a lot of varieties. We only have a few basic varieties, but they become available. We're going to make some of the varieties, at least the basic ones, like New Zealand red and gold and white, red and purple, basically available in the winter time from November onwards, I'd say. Here's another Yacon patch. That's New Zealand red is the variety. You can see these Yacon are very different, and again about a meter tall. These can grow quite substantially tall, but there's only a patch of Yacon here because we didn't have space to plant them at like a meter interval. Basically there's about 10 plants on a square meter here, and they should grow very well. We're going to probably have a lot of tubers this year, and also growing tips as well. If anyone's interested growing Yacon next year, please let us know, and they will become available on our website as well. Very rare vegetable to get, but it's a wonderful thing to have, especially throughout the winter. You can simply harvest these Yacon tubers straight out of the ground, rinse it, wash it if you like, and then just eat it. Eat it as it is. It's like a really crisp apple, as I said earlier, and it's sweet, but it has no sugar in it, and it's really juicy as well. It's a very good vegetable, and it's kind of like eating fruit, but in the middle of the winter. For anyone that knows, mashua already is another one of those ancient vegetables. It's a tuber as well. Here's one plant here. It's actually a different variety. There's actually a red one. This is new to us. But the other variety of mashua, I'll show you here actually, back to where it was growing. There's a big patch of mashua here in the middle. These ones, the tubers are white, and you can just dig them up out of the ground any time of the winter and just eat it raw. The secret is not to cook them, because they become very mushy if you cook them. You simply eat them raw, kind of like a radish, very similar to a radish, and it's a very peppery flavour, just like nasturtiums. I mean, mashua is basically just tuberous nasturtium. That's all it is. And I recommend anyone to grow them. They're very cold hardy. They reseed completely by the start of January, and they're extremely productive. One plant could grow as many as 30 tubers, and it only takes up about 1 to 2 square meters. This is a number of different plants. This is maybe about 20 plants that we've actually planted in this area now. But, check out our harvest video on Mashua on our YouTube channel or on Facebook. Really worth watching. We also grow oca in pots as well. Mashua don't work that well in pots, but that's actually part of our little experiment that we have going as well. So we have oca in pots and oca in the ground. These oca plants are immense. I mean, take a look compared to the size of my hand. I mean, I can't even come back far enough. Each of these plants is about 1/2 meter tall and probably about 1/2 meter in diameter. This would be one plant here, roughly. These are New Zealand again. Very good variety of oca. And here's some tuberous peas. Very rare thing to find, and we grew these from seeds. Check it out. Here's the flowers. They're pink. They're only small flowers because they've finished flowering already. And the tubers are underground, of course. I won't actually dig one up, but I might just take a quick peek at one. I don't actually know how big the tubers can get, but we've already spotted them before. Look at that. That's the tuber there. But we'll take another look in the winter time. May be able to make these available to people eventually. Maybe not this winter, if not next winter. Here's a couple of tomato plants that I've let go. I just threw them in the ground because I had too many of them. Didn't really have time to take care of them very well. This is fennel. Yeah, I can smell the fennel in that. And fennel is a really good plant to have in the garden. It's perennial and it keeps coming back year after year with its 2 meter tall flowering stalks, and all the insects love it. And you get seeds too that you can use for tea, and the leaves are really good for, it's a medicinal thing for your stomach. If you have an upset stomach, have some fennel. You can eat it in a salad or just eat it as it is, or make tea from the leaves as well, or from the seeds if you like in the winter time. Here's another little insect island you can see here. Here we have some of the great mullein plants. There's weight of these stalks. They're full of seed now. We can simply put a bag over them and bend them downwards and shake them, and you get a ton of seed out of them. We have actually another separate video on seed saving from great mullein that we didn't bring out yet. We have here's some hollyhock, the jet black. Isn't that a wonderful plant? Kind of hard to see with the sun out. Oh, maybe you can see it better now. It's a hollyhock jet black. Look how many more flowers there's on here. Loads and loads and loads of flowers. That's the hollyhocks for you. Same as the mallows. They flower for a long period of time. Very good plant to have, very efficient, and you just need to plant it once. That's actually the start of the plant. You can see here it has quite a tall flowering stalk. Of course this side is a little bit exposed, so the stalk had blown over because it's actually too productive. It's grown a bit too tall for its own good. We have some, these are strawberries and cream oca. By the way, oca is actually related to wood sorrel, the European wood sorrel, and it has, you can eat the leaves, but it has, what's the name of the acid? I forget the name of it, but it's citrusy. You can eat a few of them, but not too many. As you can see, there's one more insect island. There's a sage plant here, quite a large sage plant, and we also have a blackcurrant plant right here. There's also a fig plant, or a fig tree. See it here? That's the fig leaves. That one is another brown turkey. We also have a different variety, a couple of different varieties this year actually. A Desert King, which is actually the one we were eating at the last workshop. There was only one ripe pear-sized fig fruit on it, but Jesus, it was really good. It tasted a bit like watermelon, I thought. We'll try to grow as many figs as we can, and we'll report back which ones are the best ones. Apparently brown turkey is supposed to be the best variety to grow in Ireland. Here is more feverfew, again a medicinal plant and also a great insectary, and it looks nice too. It's ornamental. It's medicinal in a way to prevent headache if you eat the leaves, and also for the menstrual cycle as well if you make a tea from it, but you need to look that up on the internet yourself. This is Jerusalem artichoke. We have several different varieties here, as you see in the background. There's a few clumps of it. This is Aurora red, and I'll try and make my way through here. Here's another patch of kohlrabi, and the tubers can get quite extensive. Here's one of the tubers. I plant them sort of in little clumps, but once you harvest the big one, you simply snip them off with a secateurs and harvest it. Get rid of the leaves out of here. Don't leave them behind because the slugs are going to be attracted by them. And then the other, that can make space for the other tubers to develop further. So there's no problem with clumping a lot of the vegetables. Simply harvest them as you go, bit by bit, and then that makes space for the rest of them. Here, I must show you these pumpkins. Check out the size of these pumpkins here. Look. Just compared to my hand. That one is about probably 8 kilos, I'd say, I'd imagine. I don't even know what variety it is. We planted about 7 or 8 different varieties, and they always get mixed up, of course. They're all labeled in the greenhouse when they're small plants, so we do make sure we plant out a bit of everything, but then they get mixed up out here in the field, of course. You can't keep labels on pumpkins. I mean, check out. I mean, what an ocean of pumpkins this is. You couldn't tell the difference between them other than by looking at the finished product. Like here, that's definitely a red curry, and here's one of those ones that we just saw a minute ago. Very big ones. Count how many there is here. There's a few in one clump, and I know there is another bunch over there. Let's go back this way. This is Hermann Jerusalem artichoke or sunchoke, another new variety that we have. We also have Chinese Jerusalem artichoke, not Chinese artichoke, but Chinese Jerusalem artichoke, which is a different variety altogether. Here is a mass of oca. That's the purple variety that's new to us this year. It's strawberries and cream. I mean, it's really efficient. I mean, you could actually mount these or just pour wood chips over these, and you get more production. But trust me, with the wood chips, I mean, they're 10 centimeters down. You're going to get a lot of tubers out of it. You don't need to bother mounting them or, you know, to tell the things that people do to get a few more tubers like potatoes. It's really no maintenance whatsoever. I mean, in the middle of the winter, you just basically strip away all the dead stems and just get rid of them, and then you can dig them up by hand, bit by bit. Even if you have gloves on, that'll do. You don't need any tools at all. I mean, garden tools. Here is another load of pumpkins. There's another one. There's another one. Well, it looks like we're gonna be eating pumpkin soup this winter. Here's some, totally excited about that. Here's some curly willow. We're only starting to grow that one. I don't think we'll be able to offer any of it this year yet, but maybe in a year's time. Oh, here we have a pumpkin plant that seems to have gone through the oca patch. What I do is, when the pumpkin plants are still movable, I try to direct them kind of towards the outside of the garden, which is something I learned from one of Michael Pilarski's videos. Always plant your pumpkins at the edge of the garden and let them take over the weed patch, or even smother the grass beside your garden. That way the grasses don't come here and try to take over, and you're even blocking them from making too much seed and flowering and all the rest of it. So I definitely recommend doing that, and you save space, of course. You don't want the pumpkin plants to end up taking up valuable space that you have mulched with wood chips. You want them to just grow out into the, mostly anyway, grow them out into the grass. So here's a big Portuguese plant, Portuguese kale plant. This one and this one, they were only planted about 3 months ago, and they were tiny. They were only like in a 1 litre pot, and check out how big that plant is. Look at my hand compared to the size of the trunk. I mean, I can't even grab around that. I mean, you wouldn't expect that type of growth even in 2 years from a normal garden.